I guess at some point I should check when these actually start, looking at the other ones. Okay. All right. So for day 3, um, I was amused to discover earlier today that apparently I have been sharing these just to myself. So there are 2 days before this one that I just made available. Um, and so it's kind of a funny accident. I'm also uploading these to YouTube. So at some point, I'll probably figure out a way to stream simultaneously to YouTube and Facebook. I've seen that's possible before. Um, and it's a technical skill that would be nice to have down. It's just not a priority right now for me. So, um, oh, hey, Ronnie. Yeah, I was wondering why it is that there's like utter silence. It turns out that if I post them into a dark corner where nobody knows about them, they can't see it. Okay, so um, I had originally thought that I might go in a direction today about exploring how how I use some of this sort of the energetic awareness that has become so vivid for me, um, like the pragmatic way that that gives a sense of awareness about how the mind works and what's going on in real time, and the way that that builds as I become more sensitive to it. Um, but the direction actually feels a lot more alive to me for right now, is accounting for like this quirk I experienced of today. I just all the energy moved up into my head. I just had all of this um, churning and thinking and planning and anticipating, and uh, there's like a lot of busy work about, oh, what I should do today. I should make sure that I exercise. Wait, am I in my body? How do I get back into my body? I do it through this algorithm. Just watching the way that the mind churn and the way that I would get obsessed with the thinking pattern, and then I could notice that, and like it used to be that I couldn't do anything about it, but um, now I have a lot more sense of what's involved in breathing into, feeling into my body, so that whatever the mental cramp is doesn't just take over with whatever memes happen to be bumping around in my psyche. Um, but there's still a gravitational pull, and there's this sense of like one of the more vivid experiences for me, particularly from some of the deeper, stranger transpersonal states I've been in, um, from meditation and certain substances, has been um, there's a there's a really strong, curious tendency for my mind to find reasons why things aren't okay and then terrorize me with them. It's like the default thing my mind does. Um, so if I'm just walking around and my mind's going on autopilot, I'm worrying about what the next thing to do is. And probably the most common one for me is some version of worrying about whether I'm doing it right. What is it? Changes. But there's this sort of baseline tone that my mind has, that my okayness is conditional, that I am not safe, that there's something I need to do in order to be okay. And if I'm not doing that, whatever it is, whether I know what it is or not, then there's a big problem. Okay, got to do something about it. So, um, one of the, I got a lot of clarity about a wide range of things for how I relate to myself and how I relate to the world and how I can act in the world more effectively. I think, find out. Um, uh, but one of the biggest ones I got was this profound sense of, or as I didn't know if I said this, but from my trip to Mexico when I did um, the 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 retreat in Mexico. Um, One of the biggest lessons I got from that is that it's perfectly fine for me to enjoy this, to enjoy me. there's a there's a kind of paradox that I kept encountering, but I kept ignoring in terms of what personal development is, what it means to grow as a person and to um, become more mature, more sane. I have all of these models in my mind about, well, like there's no need for should, and let me adjust that, and can like there's all this tremendous room for compassion and engagement, and but there's this huge challenge of great, you've got this, I've got this model of what better means, but by having this sense of better and working towards it, it's starting from a presumption that there's something wrong. That doesn't that's not strictly necessarily true, but that was very true for how I was operating. And so having this model of, well, there's nothing wrong, there's just facets of how reality works. But I don't seem to understand that, so I'm wrong for not understanding this at a somatic level, for not living that way. That produces kind of a problem, because if I believe that, then I'm divorcing myself from living the model by believing that there's something wrong that I need to fix. So how do I fix that? Oh, well, there's a loop. I'm creating the problem by asking how I fix this mistake. Shoot, well, I guess I'm screwing up on that level too. Like, it's just, like, my mind would just move so fast and create so much havoc. And it does this all the time by default, just all the time. Just walking down the street, I see a street light. Am I focusing on that street light correctly? Correctly for what? Correctly for living life according to some sort of cosmic existential rule book, I guess? I don't know. So, and I'm speaking not at the level of logic. Logic is like, I can analyze the logic all day. I can see what makes sense and what doesn't just fine. But there's this thing about, in my experience, all of these thoughts get their fuel from something deeper. Now, I talked about this back in August. Like, there's this mind-body loop where the body gets activated and that triggers programs in the mind, which often go back and stimulate the body again. That's the mind's version. When I feel into the body's version, so to speak, of that experience, and then I translate it into language because I don't know how else to talk. I can embody and I can resonate. I can encourage things to be feelable in how I'm showing up here. But you have to translate into language so it becomes thoughty again. But there's this experience of, for me, there's this experience of there being a kind of fear and discomfort and not okayness, a sickness, an agitation, an activation, and that just moves. And then the mind babbles. And for the most part, my experience is that what the mind is doing is moving my attention away from the unpleasant experience in my body instead of attending to it. So probably it feels really funny to say, to feel into it this way, but I guess one way to say it is, I noticed how to joyously give up on personal development. Like, which isn't to say that there aren't ways that I want to grow and to change, but the idea that I need to fix something about me, the thought creates pain, and that pain matters. I don't like it. Causing that pain in order to stir me to change, to take action, it seems to just reinforce this loop where my mind creates these images of how I should be and then contrasts it with how I am, and that creates pain, which drives me into thinking about the ways that I could be and contrasting it with how I am, which creates pain. It's like, what's this for? I don't remember designing this. And it doesn't seem to help that much. Um, one of the vivid experiences I got was just letting go of that whole thing, stopping the presumption that reality is out to get me. Like, I didn't think of it this way. And if you had asked me, is our reality out to get me? No, reality is something like apathetic, or depending on what kind of spiritual tradition you're coming from, it's actually supportive and it's kind. Although I sort of have questions, it seems like it's literally everything. Maybe it's apathetic and hostile and benevolent all at the same time. Who knows? The whole thing's complicated. And I could have answered these questions, but it was all the mind. To translate the bodies speak, what the body, for me, what my body was living was this presumption that there are rules. Like, there's a right way to be, and there are a lot of wrong ways to be. Maybe there's a right way to be, we hope. I think so, pretty sure. And if I don't get it right, I'm going to get punished, whether it's by intention from the world or because mechanics doesn't matter. It's like being punished. There's this, so I'm wrong, I'm bad. There's something I have to do. But what do I do? Oh, I'm not supposed to ask that? Oh, God. What do I do now? Oh, I can't. All right. Focus on, okay, I guess this is the belief system I should, it's just a mess. Like, that entire picture is just an anxiety-producing mess. And noticing that it comes from a presumption, an energetic presumption at the body level. There's something wrong. Reality's not safe. God is out to get me. Um, or like, there are variations that are that sound much less spiritual. That are something like, reality has nothing that looks even vaguely like intent. It's just a mechanical isness that ises, and it follows rules, and those rules don't care about anything. They just churn along. And because most things are not intrinsically pro-human, you find that for the most part, reality by default is kind of hostile to humans, and there isn't any kind of safety net. It's just mechanically there. So yeah, life is tough, and you deal with it. But that still has that undertone of, even if, like if reality, if you took that view and reality had an intent, the interpretation I experience when I highlight that worldview is something like, reality is kind of out to get me. The laws of math and physics don't like me. And that sounds silly when I reflect on it and I compare it to my sense of what kind of person I should be and what kind of worldview I should believe in. Should, according to what? I don't know. Something like how people view me? I don't know. I've discovered that a huge, huge, absolutely stunning amount of how my thoughts work, and what I worry about, has to do with how I look to other people. It doesn't seem very happy producing for me or for the other people. It can make me sometimes entertaining. So really getting in my bones and blood this sense of, actually, maybe it's wonderful just to be me. Struggles and all, uncertainty and all, exactly as I am. Maybe this is fine. This is part of the way that the body level message lands when I translate it again back into language, has a kind of tone like, how to say that? I myself wanting to say very, very monist stuff here. Reality is one thing, and it's not like I am apart from it interacting with it. I am part of reality. Everything that exists is part of the isness. I don't know how else it could be. And clearly intent exists because here I am having intent. right? So reality has intent. And I don't mean this as a philosophical argument. I'm trying to convey something about how it feels. There's a sense sort of like, clearly I've something like inherited intent from the universe. I didn't build it. I don't remember building it, just kind of inherited it. I was like, I find myself here. I have this mind, I have this moment, I have this breath, I have this body, I have this identity, some of which I have an impression of having built, kind of, but a lot of it I haven't. I didn't make this mind, I just organized what I had. This body grew around me, for me. I just tried to use it. And within that context, it's sort of like, I don't have a better way of saying this. I'm going to keep using God language. It's as though God, which is reality, just like as though reality is sentient, because it's just easier to think that way. It's as though God really wants to be me, because here I am. So if I just really enjoy being me in whatever this manifestation is, that brings me closer to truth and closer to the enjoyment that is being this. Now, I don't mean this as, this is a philosophical argument that the logical brain can go, I can see the pieces, like, whatever, I don't care. What I'm noticing is that there's a shift that I've experienced that has opened up a tremendous amount of relaxation and ease and has made the world clearer. It's just easier to not have the mind babble quite so much. And to just see what's here and then to use my mind instead of having my mind run on autopilot like a computer that's a little overzealous about its own job. But having a sense of whatever is here, like including the way that, like I mentioned today, all this energy goes into my head and I'm babbling and I'm disconnected from my body and oh no, am I doing something wrong? Am I losing my spiritual traction from my insights in Mexico? Excuse me. And the answer I found profoundly helpful here for me is, oh, maybe. And if so, here's this moment, and it's perfectly fine. Doesn't mean I don't have preferences. Doesn't mean I don't want to create certain things. That's part of what I can enjoy too. And having that kind of attitude has just completely released the sense that there's something I need to do or I am bad. And that if only I do something differently, then I can be good. Right? I think that this is more an embodiment of the thing that I was talking about in my video in August, No Need for Should. I'd have to go back and view it again to make sure. That was the description for the mind and giving a breakdown and a little bit of the energetics. This, I think, is much closer to the actual energetic sense of it. And then there's a question of how to bridge the two. So, hey, Daniel. You ask, is there not a right way to be? There are ways to be that are better than other ways, and it is worth striving to be better, it seems. Better for what? Yeah. There's something about, like, I don't know, I'm healthy. I enjoy this experience of being healthy a lot better than if I were sick. Wouldn't particularly care for being in prison. If I'm going around depressed, that seems kind of sucky. If I'm going around not able, and this gets meta, and this is a little strange, but it seems worth mentioning. If I am stuck in a space where I'm judging myself and thinking I have to be some way, that I'm not the way I should be, or I think equivalently, if I think I am exactly the way I should be and look at how magnificent I am because I am the way I should be, as opposed to all these other ways I could be. Like having, my impression is that getting into, well, sorry, what I was going to say is for the meta thing, having this like it's okay to be lost. It's the thing that's tricky about being lost in this kind of self-judgment and other judgment and the judgment that separates us from our experience of the world and the experience of our own bodies and our and our aliveness. The trouble there is not that it's wrong or that it's worse. It's that doing that makes it hard to remember what's real. It makes it hard to notice what kind of loops that we find ourselves in, that the judgment itself is creating pain. So you may be stuck in a loop where you're busy judging, I'm in pain and I'm judging myself, but I shouldn't be judging myself and I suck. Oh look, there I am judging myself again. This is terrible. How do I get out of this? Oh, there I am trying to do something different. That makes me bad. Wait, that's a judgment. So you just like the there's actually a way in which that's really exciting. It's really fascinating. It's possible to be part of reality and forget. It's just astounding. It's amazing. But when you're in those states, it just sucks. It just sucks on the inside, which is part of the marvel of it. So we could create some sort of scale and say those states are worse than ones that have more clarity and have more truth. Okay, great. Once you create that scale and you have a new way of judging things, then sure, I agree, you can say that. And I think that on the inside, it's more pleasant to experience clarity and truth, for the most part. Sometimes it's a brutal mofo, but it's true. I say like it's true and it's clear, and there's even space to enjoy the brutality. Yeah. So I guess the short answer, Daniel, is I think I just disagree. But I think that the place from which that question wants to come absolutely makes sense. Is my opinion, is my experience. Hey, Rupert, and say you're saying I could somehow possibly be better. I think I'm saying the opposite. I the whole point of this live stream series is that I'm trying to focus on sharing, like focusing on my experience, my lived way of being, and embodying what it is that I'm talking about. And this is largely for myself. But there's also this point that if I've come to realize that it doesn't matter how clearly I explain the thoughts that I have, or even the deeper insights. The thing that seems to actually transmit clarity is if I am clear. If I am clear and I speak to my experience, my impression is that that lands better for others. And it's easier for others to receive, as opposed to me saying, you know what you need to do? If you keep getting these things confused in your mind, you're going to keep having suffering. Here's what you do to change. How do I deal with this? Okay, I'll try to receive. Right? It's hard. Right? Like, I find it hard, at least like when that's directed at me, when I imagine somebody saying that to me. But even when I was just saying it there, in my body, there's this right? So just emphasizing this is my lived experience. So Rupert, to be a little clearer, I think I am saying the opposite, and I'm focusing on myself. I'm noticing that I'm reporting and I'm reflecting on a lived experience of, oh, I think I've given up on personal growth. And it's not like, I say it that way to be a little provocative, but I mean something sincere in it. I think I've given up on the idea of being better. I just stopped believing in it. The result is a lot of breathing room, and that a huge section of my mind's patterns, what I was talking about in August in terms of memes taking over and driving the show, and creating these mind-body loops that create suffering and then propagate out to others, a lot of that just doesn't work anymore in me. Because I get this thought that goes something like, ah, here I am walking around and I'm rehearsing what I might say later. That's bad. And I just stare at the thought with this. There's a clear sense of separation. There's me and there's my mind. And my mind is babbling like a crazy monkey. And I'm just looking at it going, that's nice. It is wonderful to experience this weird thing that my mind is doing. And here I am breathing the air. And in this present moment, this is happening earlier while I was out on a walk, so I was just enjoying the gorgeous sky and then thinking about things having to do with ancient planetary deities like Jupiter and so on, and the way that Jupiter is represented by the sky. And because of those mental associations, I was actually not experiencing the sky as much. And then I noticed that, and my mind would try to give me more judgments. And I would watch that whole process and go, wow, there's this whole unfolding of my experience, including my babbly mind, where this judgment keeps trying to happen. So, because I've sort of given up on being better, I have all this space. And then it's so much easier for me to move in the direction of, oh, I can just do the things that feel better. And then it's not about being better. Like better means something different there. It's not instead of it being about my worth, it's about sensation. Am I having a good time? Am I doing things that are fulfilling? And it's not like if I'm not, then I am bad. It's just, oh, well, I noticed that if I eat junk food, I feel terrible. It's not a matter of me being a bad person. It's just an uncomfortable sensation. I think I don't want to do that. So, yeah. So to the extent that you want to take on what I'm observing for myself, I'm suggesting that you cannot possibly somehow be better, or that at least if you don that perspective, if you're like me, then maybe you'll find a lot of ease. But I also want to emphasize, I don't mean to say these as suggestions. I am, like, you can take them as that. And parts of me, I think, partially intended as it, but that's not my goal. My goal is to highlight my own experience, to reveal it and to be transparent as I emphasize embodying basically the stuff I was talking about in August as I deepen this and as I notice the transformation. In the hopes that how I do that might inspire you to notice how you can do the version that is good for you, which might be the same and it might be dramatically different in various pieces. Looks like there are more comments here. Daniel says, I experience an instinctive aversion to the enjoyment, perhaps some worry that it is an incarnation of selfishness, though I suppose one still has altruism in the way you mentioned with regards to ceasing to be cancerous. Yeah. It seems like if I try for that, it might lead me astray from the path towards improving the world. Yeah. Yeah, that hurts my heart. Like what becomes alive for me there is I so relate. Oh, I so relate. I would summarize my last decade as being self-obsessed with my desperation to save the world. Like finding a way for me to find my value by rescuing the world and rescuing other people. And let me spell out how bad the thing is that people need to be rescued from. And here, I can be the savior. This is part of something that called Karpman's triangle, or the victim triangle. There's a beautiful article about this. If I remember, I'll post it in the comments after this this live stream. Oh, actually, actually, this is very quick. I think it's right here. Here we go. The 3 facets of the victim. Copy and bam. Ta-da. Although it looks like my comment vanished. Ah, there it goes. Okay. So that article by Lynn Forrest, beautiful job, spells this out. But the compressed version for my own experience with this particular dynamic is I think I was seeing real things, right? There are real dynamics in the world about these mechanisms of like the memes going out and doing these things, and rationality being necessary in these particular ways, and epistemics being kind of screwed, and blah blah blah. Like this stuff is real, I think. Um, but the emotional tone, again, this is coming back to the primacy of the body's energies and the emotional context that holds what the thoughts are thinking. Like the mind has basically no power. The mind responds via programs. That's basically all it does. So when I bring in this tone of fear, and it's specifically, I need you to believe in these horror stories of how bad and dangerous everything can be. I need you to be scared of the world, right? So that when you see that I have the answer, then I can rescue you from your torment and I can have validation. Right? This is something like an implicit emotional drive across my last decade. And it's just, there's something profoundly absurd about it, and it makes sense, and it's beautiful in its own way, but it's also unkind. It's unkind to me, and it's unkind to other people. It's unkind to me in that I have to operate under this constant sense of I sort of have to believe in there being something wrong, and I have to believe in me being wrong. Like I need validation. Right? When I'm coming from a place of pure care, and I'm not saying I'm not saying that the rescuer thing is the only thing that's been driving me for those last 10 years, but it's been a pretty powerful force. It's been very there. I feel like I've mostly like 98% kicked it out now, which is wonderful. I feel like I have so much more breathing room. But like there's another dimension, which is actual care. There's a sense of, there's this beautiful future that I want to live in, that I intend to live in, and I anticipate. I have a friend who refers to remembering the future. I remember the future in which humanity grows up out of its addiction to aging. Like that's wonderful to me. Like when we can have something that looks like functional government, and it's not based on coercion, but is instead based on an actual awareness of the way that human beings work together. Like I've got a lot of details about this, and I look forward to that. There's a question of how likely is it, blah, 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 whatever. That's the vision that I want to move towards, and that's what I'm hoping to resonate with and encourage, in large part by living as the being who embodies movement in that direction, rather than trying to make other people do something. I think I talked about some of this in August, but it was more mental, and now it's getting more into my body. So what I would say is, like I'm taking your concerns and I'm mapping them over to my own lived experience. The challenge that I personally ran into with the fear of going astray from doing world-saving things is that it meant that I had to ignore all the parts of me that might want to go in a different direction than saving the world. Which is to say, saving the world isn't true of my being, and therefore I have to violate my being in order to make sure I'm on a save the world trajectory. Why would I do that? Maybe I'm a selfish jerk. Maybe I just want to have a family and have a good time while Rome, or rather in this case, the world burns. Is that true of me? Demonstrably no, it's not. I still have this powerful drive to uplift. I'm uplift is kind of a funny word to say it, but to show up in a way that encourages a beautiful world, the kind of world I want to live in. And I don't want to just silo and go, well, I guess we're all screwed, or well, maybe we're not screwed, and I'll just hope. I don't find myself wanting to do that, but that's something I had to discover. And by discovering it, it means that I have something like a deeper sort of integrity. It means that I don't have to pretend I don't want the things that I want. And it means that I can move entirely from what I want to do. Yeah. And with that said, I want to say it makes a ton of sense for you to have this, what you describe as the instinctive aversion to the enjoyment. Yeah, that makes a ton of sense to me. Like it, I mean, it matches my sense of you in particular, Daniel. And there's a way that resonates super hard with some of my own experience. I feel like I've worked through a lot of it. I had to sort of make myself enjoy. It's kind of a funny way of putting it. More like there was a kind of barrier I had to work through. A choice. I think a choice is a better way of describing my own experience with this. I had to choose whether I wanted to enjoy this. Sorry, enjoy is a weird word in this context. I had to choose whether I wanted to continue telling the story of me that I had been telling, where I'm working so hard and I'm trying to be sincere, and yeah, I've got these shadow aspects and I'm probably trying to get attention in some ways, but I sincerely don't want that to be the focus, and I want to do these things that help the world, and I'm scared of the world, and how do I work these things? And I keep trying and I keep trying to show up, but I keep losing my energy, and here I am, like I haven't shown up for like a couple months, and now I'm feeling shy and embarrassed about that, but I really am trying. Like, how much do I want to practice that story and live it versus the truth? I had to really feel into that because there's a lot about this story that was very beautiful and appealing. Sort of had this secret belief that I was going to just become this fantastically powerful influence in the world, just kind of an expectation. And there's something like ego fulfilling about that sort of story. It's very powerful. And it's not like ego is bad. There's something very, very pleasurable about that experience. It's something like, to the extent you want to ascribe a purpose to incarnation, to consciousness coming into this form as humans experiencing time, then there's something like, oh, well, the point of this experience is to really enjoy this experience. So you can enjoy the experience of being terrorized by the possibility of what's coming and the grandiosity of being me, right? So, there's something very delicious here. There's something that if I were going to break, if I were going to stop telling myself, there's something to mourn. And there's a lot of natural forces in me that don't feel like it is safe, or didn't. This is past, in the past tense, sort of porting myself over to the experience of this transition. But there was a part of me that felt like it wasn't safe, like in a visceral sense, like an infant isn't safe, like it wasn't safe for me to stop telling these stories. And it was precognitive. I could come up with reasons. I said precognitive. Like precognition has its own meaning now with psi. But like it's beneath cognition in that this isn't an intellectual thing. I could have excuses that would come up, but it's sort of, that's my mother's arm. Okay, I should explain that at some point. But it's basically a rationalization. The terror is visceral. It's energetic in the sense I was talking about in my video yesterday. I don't know if any of you got to see it yet because I just made it visible today because I didn't know I was posting them privately. But it was very somatic for me. It was a very lived experience of that's not okay. Like, no, can't break that. So I had to decide how much I wanted to support that way of being. And it was a tricky choice. I had to decide how much I wanted to lean into what's true right now, not intellectually, but what rings in the body. What do I know to be true right now? Not what ideas do I know to be true, but what matters right now. And for the most part, the things that I find that matter right now are things like enjoying the feeling of the pillow on my back. When I'm with people, pausing and looking them in the eye and feeling them, going, that's a person. Lived experience, an entire lifetime, a world. How mysterious, how wonderful. And with that, a question of, this gets into some, it's a little tricky to say this because it's, hearts get very closed very easily, especially in our terrified culture right now. For me, there's an honest question of how can I love better? How can I love better? How can I love this person better? That doesn't mean how can I use my resources to support this person's material needs? How do I show up and use my energy in order to um, help them feel better? Those are interaction questions. That's a shortcut. If I cringe from the idea of interacting with this other, that's an indication that that's not where I'm at, and that's not the pathway to loving better. So that becomes part of the question. How do I love better? What I find for the most part is just being present, being sincerely curious, and noticing when I'm making the interaction about me. It's kind of funny because I have this whole Babel series here where I'm talking about me, but I mean something specific. I mean this tone of when I'm looking at the other person and I'm thinking, oh, I wonder if I'm loving them well enough. Because here I am developing this virtue. Right? That's what I mean by making it about me. It's very different from how do I love you better? It's a tricky, slippery thing to talk about. Our culture doesn't have consistent language for this. But that's the kind of stuff that I keep finding actually is true, that matters in the present moment. And then those questions naturally lead me, not intellectually, but somatically. My energy moves naturally in the direction of, for instance, here I am doing this series of live streams. Okay? This is moving in the direction of, I actually have the tickle of an idea for how to bring the stuff that I was calling wise knowing into the world in a way that I think will actually fit better. It'll fit me better, it'll be more sustainable. I'm getting a tickle of how to do it. And I want to. It feels wonderful, challenging, but wonderful. Okay? So, and basically I have to decide if I'm willing to let my sense of myself get destroyed for the sake of truth. Not as an identity question, but as a question of what am I in, how deeply do I want to understand what I'm here for? For lack of a better language, like there's a purpose. Maybe there is, maybe there isn't, depends on how you want to frame it, blah, 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 whatever. But what do I want this life to be? I don't know if that conveys anything that is useful to you, Daniel. But that's what is alive for me when I read your comment. And I just want to say I sympathize enormously. I've lived that a lot, and it's tricky. So yeah, Rupert, looks like you're responding to Daniel. I am sure I would be much better at improving the world if I enjoyed things more. That My guess is that's true of everyone. I think that if we pushed a button and everybody enjoyed everything, well, a whole bunch of people would die. A whole lot of people would die. But, and we'd have a lot of mental health problems for a little while. But then we would be in a really beautiful world. A really beautiful world. Because it is so, so much easier to care about other people when you're taking care of yourself. And there, see, that's the slip. That's the point of this series for me. There's this way where I'm making these proclamations about what's true of everybody without checking what exactly I mean, like where that generalization is coming from. I think it's true that for most people, they are much better able to show up for others when they're taking care of themselves. I find that when I give myself permission to flourish and I actually take care of myself, I let myself be physically comfortable. I actually care about the things that matter to me, and I say those needs matter, and I make a priority of actually meeting them. Not as a contracted thing, but as a loving myself thing. Then it becomes so much easier for me to show up for other people. I want to show up for other people. I find myself doing so. And then I find out I don't know how to love. Like, I'm not clueless, but it's a skill. It's a skill, and I'm learning. Learning. So the short version is, I resonate with that statement. Okay, Daniel replies, thus leaving the so-called self as it is rather than trying to mess with it expresses the altruism that is already there rather than constricting via should. Yeah, there's like a technical accuracy thing that's buzzing in my head, but this feels basically right to me. I think maybe the technical correction is one that you would enjoy, so I'll go ahead and, or one that you might benefit from. So I'll go ahead and highlight it. But I think the thing to stay with is the sensation in the body that has the sense of, yeah, that's right. Got it. Okay, that's the important part. That really is the important part. I can give all kinds of theoretical details about why I think that's true, why I think that that's important. But also, you can feel that that's the important part. The body tracks what's real. The mind does computations and rearranges symbols and logic, but the body is where you feel truth. Right? So the nuance I would want to add is that for my impression is that for most people in the modern culture, and this has possibly been true of cultures for like 5,000 years or so, the sense of self and the sense of should are deeply intertwined. So it's not just don't add shoulds. There's something about weeding out the energy, and I'm using energy metaphorically, but like it's a lived experience, like this movement of something, sort of like anger is an energy of some kind, that kind of energy. There's some sort of energy that fuels should-based thinking. And there's a need to attend to that in order to shift out of should-based thinking. This is not a description of what you should do. I feel like I'm describing how a steam engine works. Like I'm saying, if you want the steam engine to stop, you need to stop letting the steam go into the engine. That's basically what I'm saying. So the trick is that from what I can see in how a mind design works and how these energy flows work for most people, the identity structure, their sense of self, comes in part from the movement of that energy that fuels the should. So they end up in an interesting challenge, and a very interesting and potent challenge that when they start successfully dismantling the should engine at the base, when they actually start pulling out the power rod so that it's not fueling the whole thing, there's a pretty significant if they've been motivated up to that point by what image of themselves they are creating, and that image of themselves happens from within their sense of self, like, I'm going to grow as a person. I'm going to become better this way. What happens is, to the extent that their inner practices of noticing the body level sensations of should, and then relaxing and being with the experience and letting it move through without reacting to it, to the extent that they're successfully doing that, they undermine the motivation that they've been using to do that in the first place. So it's possible to end up in this kind of oscillation. I used to encounter this a lot with doing meditation, where the more I would meditate, the less I would be inclined to meditate, because I was successfully dismantling the sense of self that was creating this image of, yes, I am a great meditator. I have developed all this stillness. I have dissolved my ego. I just see truth. Great. But when I dissolve the I, and that image goes away, what's motivating me to sit down and meditate more? I claim there is something. I referred to this before as the true free will. There is something there. Or, I mean, this is another place where it seems like it would be more effective for me to emphasize my experience. I think it generalizes. I'm pretty sure it generalizes. But let me be a little more precise. My experience has been that the thing that lets me bypass those oscillation loops is that there is a place that I can stand. And language is terrible for this. I understand the paradoxes. There isn't a way to use the first person singular, I, me, my, etc., that without creating ambiguities. So again, feel into this rather than analyzing the words. I find that there is a place that I can stand, or that I can remember, or I can notice. Something more like the basis of my capacity to care, the basis of my consciousness. There's a center that when I stand there and then my sense of self dissolves, I'm still standing. I'm still choosing. I'm still engaging. So if I stand from that place, then it's possible to do moves like deconstructing the should engine. Because I'm not, the motivation isn't coming from inside the should engine, right? Instead, it's coming from God. It's coming from the font of consciousness. It's coming from being. Then I have real power and stability. If you ever encounter the material from Aleister Crowley, the wickedest man in the world from about 100 years ago, famous for doing a whole lot of ceremonial Western magic. He has this whole thing about the Book of the Law, where he channels love is the law, love under will, do what thou wilt is the whole of the law. This stuff sort of floats around in the culture, so I'm highlighting it. And doing the will there, the use of will, do what thou wilt thing, it doesn't mean do whatever you want to. It means act from will. If you act from will, then stuff works. And the law is this, it's like a law of physics, only it's a law of metaphysics. It says stuff works better if you act from there. Right? So I think that this is talking about the same thing. It's talking about like your true free will, your place of groundedness from which choice, actual choice is possible, instead of reaction with justification that you call choice. So that's the place where I think it generalizes. I think that there really is something that all people can access that is a type of clarity about where you are making decisions from, that is not about an understanding, but it can result in a mental understanding. because the mind becomes subject to your being. Okay. So that's some extra detail. But again, I want to rewind and highlight, I think you already got it. Like, I think the essence of it, the feeling of it, I think you've got right. The thing to focus on is the feeling rather than the idea that, I'm guessing for you in particular, Daniel, I'm going to make a guess. I think that for you in particular, there's some tendency to assume that the ideas in your mind are the cause of the feelings in your body. And that's partially true because you can stimulate sensations in your body with your thoughts. But there's something that happens before the thought. And it's a body sensation. It's a body ringing. It's a truth. Okay? So if you can tune into that level of sensation, I think that you'll find it easier to track the kind of truth that you're looking for instead of getting lost in the analysis. And you do some brilliant and very clear analysis. Like, you're very good at tracking what these things imply and at articulating the idea that's under it. It's a beautiful use of mind. What I'm encouraging is to have the mind in service of an energy that is a little bit more carnal, that's more visceral. Right? To the extent that that feels right to you, to the extent that that feels appealing. And it's like, what you do with that is perfectly fine, one way or the other. Rob. Hello, Rob. It says, salutations, pardon my late arrival. What's the discussion for the evening? The discussion is being okay no matter what. I feel like I covered the arc of it, but I'm going to leave this up here. And for this series, this is 100 Days of Visibility. I'm putting these on YouTube as well. Like I mentioned at the beginning, I might see about finding a way to stream to YouTube and Facebook simultaneously. I know that there's some way of doing that. It's not a top priority for me to make sure that that technical side happens. So for now, I'm just doing these, and then I'm downloading the video from Facebook and uploading it onto YouTube. But in any case, yeah. So this is day 3. It should be easy to catch up, and also it's I don't have a curriculum plan. Well, I have that down packed, my friend. Cool. I'm not quite sure I understand what that means, but cool. Yeah, the upshot for this one, if I had to summarize. Just feeling into the resonance of what it is that I want to say here. I've noticed that through a great deal of my life, I've had a lot of concern with, am I doing it right? Am I growing properly? Am I screwing up? And I've noticed a pretty significant shift where I've basically given up on being better. I've decided to really enjoy being me in every way that this appears. And this has freed up a lot for me. I wanted to share that both to just show some of my own growth, but also because I expect that showing up with the embodiment of this might make it easier for others to do their version of the same thing if it resonates with them. And also, although this is a little in retrospect, but it's absolutely in tune, this is an embodiment of, a deeper embodiment of the stuff I was talking about back in August. That stuff I was trying to embody, but it was like very intellectual. And what I want to do now is try to transmit, well, I want to embody that material. And I expect that to encourage a transmission that will be more useful for people, more practically useful and lived. So that's both an overview of this one and an overview of what the whole series is for. Oh, I feel touched, Rob. Thank you. Okay. So the previous two I managed to make under in the ballpark of half an hour or less, and this one's making up for it. We're getting to the hour mark. So I'm inclined to close here. So thanks everybody for jumping on. There's something that feels really yummy to me about when people show up and I get to have interaction. Um, it's it's not so much about validation. There's a sense of me being more in touch with what's really going on for people and how what I'm saying is landing. It feels less like I'm just in my own world. Um, and that feels really delicious to me. It's very precious. So thank you for showing up. Um, and like my next week is a little crazy. I'm at this Airbnb. I'm going to be switching back to being with at my parents' place on Wednesday, and then there's a bit of shuffling around to sort stuff out. Um, so my schedule is going to be a little erratic for these. I'm still going to have one a day. That's still the intention. But I'm hoping to eventually just have it be it's something like I'm doing this at 9 a.m. each day or something like that. So if that happens, when I have a schedule, I'll announce that. And then it should be a little bit easier for people to hop on if they want to. And that's pretty fulfilling for me too. So thanks all for showing up, and interact with a bunch of you later. Cheers.